I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. This is a really nice fall front desk, drop front desk. I believe it's French. I'm not really up on French furniture, but it doesn't have pulls. You have to use a key. That's a very French thing to do. These hinges I've seen on a lot of different French desks. The one thing I noticed that doesn't seem very French is these dovetails are big dovetails. And the French furniture I've worked on usually has very fine dovetails, but I don't think that means anything. If it is French, it would be Louis XVI because of its simple lines and these tapered legs. It's not in bad shape, but it has a lot of veneer problems. You can see that there's veneer down here that needs to be changed out or replaced. I don't know what's going on with that. It's got some missing pieces. This escutcheon is out, and it's got more obvious veneer damage on this side. So that's really what it's in here for, is just to get the veneer repaired. I'm going to start with the repairs on the side. First thing I'll do is take the lid off, take the drawers out. Alright, I've cut some pieces of scrap plywood to go in here against my clamps. I'm going to explore this area here, open it up as much as I can. I'll work some glue in there. And then I'll clamp it up. As I glue this, you're going to see that I actually cut a second piece. This is so thick, and I'm going to glue two pieces in there, and the second piece fit better anyway. Alright, now I'm going to check out the drawer fronts. I know they're not bad. There's a missing piece of veneer there. Most importantly, it's the escutcheons where the key goes in. On all these drawers, the escutcheons are kind of messed up. Anytime you have a drawer that doesn't have pulls, but you have to stick the key in to use the key as a pull, it's just not unusual that these escutcheons are messed up. Here's a drawer that has a pretty good escutcheon on it. It's slightly damaged. And of course the lid to the desk itself, the escutcheon's not bad. It's not bad, but I suspect that's a replacement. The wood doesn't look like what I think is the original wood there. I think I'm going to make the escutcheons out of maple. I found a nice piece of 1/4 inch maple. I'm not sure what they were originally, maybe holly or something, but the maple's good and hard. I want it to be a hard wood. It's going to get beat up again. I think I'm going to draw the outline of the escutcheon onto a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, and so I'll have a little template then I can draw onto the wood. Okay, so now I'm going to, using my template, I'm going to mark out 5 of these on my piece of maple. There's 5 escutcheons altogether. I think I only need 3, but I'm going to make some extras just in case. I'm going to trace them out on my board. I'm going to strike centers and drill 2 holes for the inside of the escutcheon. This first one's a little rough, and I got too close in one place, but I might be able to work with it. But that's why I made extras. I'm going to try to do a better job on the next one. The next step, before I do anything else, the next step, I'm going to take the worst drawer here. This one was missing discussion entirely, and just see, how I'm doing. And actually, this is good because my blank here is a little bit too big, so I can start, paring this down, see if I can get it to fit in there. Of course, the opening that I'm going into is really chewed, really bad. Let's see what I get. And as I'm filing this, I'm going at an angle. In other words, this is an exaggerated angle, but I want the bottom of this piece to end up being slightly smaller than the top. That way it'll fit in there a lot tighter. Now, I've been working on this for about 15 minutes, filing and filing. I'm very close. But I'm going to go over to the sander. I've been afraid to try it on the sander, but I'm going to go on the sander and see if I can just take it off just a little bit. And if that works well, then the next one I do, I'll use the sander more. Let's try it. I've set the sander at a slight angle. It'll give me that that little bevel I'm looking for. Oh yeah, that works a lot better. I still got to use my rasp on this inside part, but I think going forward for the next one I'll definitely use the sander. Alright, I think I just about got it. I also had to take some material out of the hole itself, which would have been a lot easier had I taken the lock off, but I want to point out the way that this lock is nailed on, I did not want to take it off. I'd probably never get it back on again. So I just got to work with this with the lock in there. I think I'm about ready to glue this in place. Alright, so the last thing before I install this is I've got to smooth the inside of it. This is my, I won't be able to do it once it's installed. And so I'm just going to use the round rasp. Actually, I think I'm just going to use sandpaper just to smooth it out as best I can. I'm going to use epoxy putty to set this in there. There's no sort of glue joint to speak of. You know, the hole here is so misshapen that, and there's so many gaps, I have to fill those anyway, so I might as well use epoxy putty as the adhesive. Set it down in there. I'm going to jam a little piece of paper into the lock, hopefully in such a manner that I can then, after the glue up, reach in and pull it out, because I don't want anything to get into the lock. It doesn't work. The lock is non-functional anyway, but I don't want to get anything in there. Tomorrow I'll pare this down and see how it looks, and if it looks good I'll go on and see what I'm going to do about the other escutcheons. Okay, this looks good. Let's I'll try to trim this off. Alright, I've got to get back onto the case of this desk. Take these clamps off, look for any more loose veneer. I think I'm pretty good. I'll probably find some. But I need to make these little bead moldings right here. Luckily I found a loose piece here, so it'll make it a little easier to measure. Alright, it looks like 1/8 of an inch, and I went through my mahogany scraps. I got a board here that's pretty flat. I'll mill this down to 1/8. Well, there's a problem on this drawer because there's so much wood chipped away. It's weird. Even on the underneath here, it's all chipped away, leaving a rather large lip here. All this veneer could get chipped up and be missing, like the one that's missing here now. I think I'm going to use epoxy putty to glue this down so that I can fill this void underneath of it. And I may even have to go on the underside of this whole drawer front to build up this chewed up wood to the level of the edge of the veneer here. It's got to have something behind it to support it. Okay, I've let the putty dry while I've been working on other things, and now I'm going to sand it. Good, I'm glad I did that. That was a strange void behind all this veneer, and it's filled now. Okay, now back to my new escutcheon. I'm going to sand this area with a little bit of 220, and then I'm going to seal the new wood with some garnett shellac. This is the color of garnett shellac. So over the course of the rest of the day, I'm going to give this probably a couple more coats at least of the shellac. I really want to get the new maple sealed off. So I put on a couple more coats of the garnett shellac. In fact, yesterday evening I even sanded it a little with 500, put another coat on. I'm going to sand it again really lightly, just with a little 500, and then I'm going to apply some dye stain. This is perfect brown dye stain, thinned out pretty well, and just need to alter this color a little. Alright, I'll let that stain dry for a little while, and then I'll give it another coat of shellac. So now I've got to get some stain and finish on these new little bead moldings. I'm going to sand them again with the 150, then 220, and I'll put a little probably perfect brown dye stain on them. So now I'll brush on a little shellac onto those pieces. I'll use the garnett shellac again, even though I don't really need it for the color necessarily. It does help make anything look a little older. Now I'm just going to give this area a little spritz of shellac to seal in that stain. Alright, these have dried overnight, and I'm going to braid them with a gray pad. I don't want to use sandpaper, it might cut through the stain. and then I'm going to spray a little shellac on it, build up some finish. So now I'm ready to do a little cleaning and polishing. I think all the veneer is glued down, although it's not unusual on a job like this to find more loose veneer as you go along. But first thing I want to do, I'm going to take a commercial cleaner and using a patting motion, just clean it. And now I'm going to do a little French polishing thing on here. I use this product that I buy commercially, and just give it a quick one. Sure enough, doesn't surprise me, but I found some more loose veneer here. I'll get some glue under it, clamp it down, and then move on to some other section of the desk. So now I'm going to begin the waxing process. I only French polished the drawer fronts and the lid. The rest of this, I've cleaned it, and I'm going to go straight to the waxing, and I'll also wax the other pieces too. So I've got some dark wax here. I'm going to go over it first with some 4/0 steel wool, just slightly, then my applicator rag, and then a buffing rag. And you'll see that the motion is not unlike the French polishing technique. Alright, so you get the idea. I'm going to do one section at a time, whatever feels most comfortably, and do each section. The important thing when doing waxing like this is to make sure that you don't get too much wax on here. So that's why I'm really patting it off. It looks really good. And then we'll buff it again later today, but just for right now, you don't want to leave too much on. You won't be able to buff it off later. There you go, a nice little French desk, drop front desk. And as you remember, it just had a lot of veneer repairs. You know, every place we looked. The most extensive thing I had to do was make new wooden escutcheons. There's 5 escutcheons, I made 3 new ones. It really didn't look bad when it came in here, but it just had a lot of problems. And but now it looks pretty good.